So today I want to talk through the biggest mistakes I've made hiring, where hiring has gone really wrong, and some of the lessons that you can learn by being aware of these issues. So the first one, and I've changed some of the names here because I think it would be not good to name them specifically, but um, the first one I had was from a guy named Marcel, and he was actually a really good employee. So I actually hired him when I came to Indonesia. He was from a different part of Indonesia. He was actually from Java, which is the nearby island, very big island, but and he had a small family as well. So there was one thing that he was expert, really good on, and that was negotiation. He was an awesome negotiator, really good at getting the best cost for everything. But ultimately, it got to the point um, whereby he basically went back to Java uh, to actually, you know what? He moved over with his family and his small kids to Bali and started working for me. And then a month or two went past, and then his family started going back one by one. So his children went back, or his kid went back to stay with the grandmother, and the other kid went back for school, and then his wife went back. At one point, he basically went back to visit the family because he was staying in Bali while he was working, and he just messaged me one morning to say he can't come back to Bali. That basically he had a big fight with his wife, and that it is not possible then to come back to Bali. And for me, that was obviously a no go, considering this was a role where you had to be in person because we had and we still have multiple suppliers around Bali, Indonesia, and China. But this was back when these were our only suppliers, so it was key to be on the ground here. So, like, the one lesson from this was basically just the location and the family. You've got to look at the person you're hiring and what is their personal situation. So, if, for example, they have obviously kids and a wife or a family, then you've got to be cognizant of that because the relocation is a big thing. It is a big thing. So, obviously, something a little bit more basic looking at the location here. The next one was a guy named Ray, and this one was actually, if there was any hire that I actually regret, it is this one, and it's just down to my inexperience. Um, but basically, I hired a guy named Ray from Jakarta, from the capital city. Worked for a pretty big company up in an international company actually, and he came in. The guy was a bit young, and he basically came down to Bali to work. Now, the only problem with that was that during the hiring process, I ran a hiring process, but at the time I was so inexperienced. I basically hired for technical skills as opposed to core competencies or characteristics. These are some of the earlier mistakes I made. Um, and you cannot get caught up in hiring for technical skills because ultimately the first thing that's got to happen is it's got to be a culture fit in the company. So they've got to have, if your company works hard, if your company has fun, if your company keeps to their word, if your company is leaders, you've got to hire people with those characteristics. So in this instance with Ray, it was a supply chain manager hire, and a supply chain manager at an early Amazon FBA company is kind of like a number two because the supply chain is a huge part of Amazon FBA. Now, when Ray moved to Bali, it became very apparent um, very quickly, even after a few weeks, that he was not a fit for the role. And it was not because he didn't have technical skills, it was because he didn't have the characteristics of a leader. And how that showed was he was unable to make decisions. So he was unable to manage projects and on site with suppliers and so on, whereby everything was coming back to me, even beyond the what would be a reasonable expectation of reporting back any issues. So it became that he was basically debilitated from making decisions, and therefore it was very obvious that I had to make a change even at that early. Now that was only after a few weeks, so of course he's a grown man, but it was one that I kind of regret because um, I didn't like. Yeah, obviously firing anyone is never good, but that particularly wasn't good. He didn't take it too greatly, but also it was not that he didn't take it badly either, but it was one that was just down to my inexperience, you know. But that's going to happen. You're going to make decisions, and you're not going to get it right all the time. As long as your heart is in the right place and you're trying to do what's best for the person on the other side and your company as well. look, that's all you can do. Now the with Ray, unfortunately, so that didn't work out after a few weeks, and that was when I um, really learned to look at characteristics as opposed to just technical competency. So make sure you're doing that in your business today. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below for future videos. Now back to business. The next one here is one where the employee or the candidate basically lied to me, or the employee lied to me. I don't hold it against her, but Leah in this instance worked in content, and um, she had started working for me, and she basically told me at the start um, that her parent had kidney issues and was on dialysis, so she would have to go to the hospital a few times a week to bring her parent to the hospital. And I thought, look, that's very honourable, very respectable thing to do, to take care of your parents. So I said, no problem. And Leah started. Now, this was ran on maybe 2 or 3 months, I believe, at this stage, whereby it was very apparent that there was just basically a gap between what she had said she was going to do and a gap between the work she was doing, to the point where I pulled her up a few times, and also then after enough warnings basically said, look, it's not working out. Now in this instance, she actually said to me that her parent or her mother at the time is not on dialysis. It was actually her on dialysis, which is obviously shocking to hear that, and I obviously felt really bad for her because she was still young. She must have been in her 40s. So obviously not a nice situation, not a nice situation. And this was what she told me after, as I was firing her. And with that, to her credit, she basically said that, look, I'm right in doing this because she can't keep up with the work, and it wouldn't be fair for her to continue. So I'm obviously just glad that that was her reaction to that. Obviously, I didn't know at the time, um, but would have wanted to do what I could there. But she obviously thought enough was enough as well. So, so yeah, that was one where basically the candidate flat out lied to me, and I wasn't running a long process, or I wasn't running a proper process at that time, whereby now I am. So that was one. We've obviously talked about the location issues, just some of the basic ones, the requirements if they're needed in a certain location. Talked about characteristics, fits with Ray, as far as you got to check for characteristics first, or character first. And then other one, also a candidate basically just lied to me, and that was Leah. So being able to run a full process will help mitigate that. There was another one as well, and this was by Felicia. So I actually ran this hiring process in person, and I rented an office and ran the whole hiring process. But the process was too slow. The process was too slow. In between stages was too long, and ultimately, by the time I actually offered her the role, in the end, she basically declined it because it had taken too long, and she'd given assurances to her existing boss that she wouldn't leave. I believe she negotiated a better contract, which is totally fine. That's a normal thing to do. But ultimately, I know that process ran too long, and if I had have been more decisive when I realised that she was by far the best candidate, and she was a real rising talent. I think she was like a high achieving sports star as well. So yeah, look, I just ran a slower process there, and unfortunately, that was what happened. So that's why I recommend running a higher or a faster, not a faster process, but making it condensed, so that you have your application cover letter, so you have your phone interview, your technical assignment, and you have your final interview in a timely manner, so that you're giving that assurance to the candidate, and then hopefully your employee then at that point. Okay, so there are 4 stories. I hope that that is helpful for you. What happened with Marcel, Ray, Leah, and Felicia. So what I would recommend you do is, based on these issues and mistakes, I've built a hiring system so you can hire Amazon employees or VAs for your Amazon FBA business. So check out the video here so you don't make the same mistakes I did, and you can hire successfully for your business.